Your grandfather is dead, Evelyn, my mother said, her black funeral dress still smelling faintly of church lilies. Stop letting strangers eat off his grave. Behind her, my brother Grant stood beside the locked gate of Cedar Hollow Farm, looking less like a mourner than a man waiting for escrow to clear. And nailed where Grandpa Arthur's hand-painted sign used to hang was a glossy board that read, Future Site of Hartwell Ridge Luxury Retreat. Plus, D. I did not scream. I did not fall apart. I stood there with my heels sinking into Kentucky mud, staring at that sign while the wind moved through the bare oak trees like the farm itself was trying to speak. My name is Evelyn Reed, though in Milbridge County, most people still knew me as Evelyn Hartwell. I was 35, a nonprofit accountant in Lexington, the kind of woman people trusted with spreadsheets in quiet rooms. I knew how to find a missing receipt, how to read a budget that had been dressed up to hide shame, how to sit through a board meeting without letting my face betray what my stomach already knew. But Cedar Hollow was never just numbers to me. To my grandfather, Arthur Hartwell, this land was a second chance machine, built out of soil, sweat, and stubborn mercy. More than 100 acres rolled behind that gate, vegetable rows, hay fields, a weathered barn, a tool shed that smelled like motor oil and cedar dust, a community kitchen, 3 small transition cottages, and a horse paddock where veterans with trembling hands learned to breathe again. Every Saturday morning of my childhood had the same music. Biscuit pans clattering, coffee perking black and strong, Grandpa Arthur calling out names like every person mattered. Lila Brooks came there with 2 children and an empty pantry. Owen Maddox came back from war unable to sleep indoors. Tyler Nash, only 17, came because school had nearly given up on him, and Grandpa put a wrench in his hand before the boy could put trouble in it. People in Millbridge called Cedar Hollow the place that gave folks another shot. Grandpa hated praise, but he loved that sentence. He said a farm ought to grow more than corn. Grant never understood that. My older brother spoke in square footage, tax exposure, development potential. To him, Cedar Hollow was not a promise. It was dead equity sitting under weeds. He wore ambition the way some men wore cologne, too much of it and always before breakfast. Our mother, Patricia Hartwell, carried a quieter poison. She was not simply greedy. Greed would have been easier. Mom believed Grandpa had spent his goodness on everyone except us. She remembered cold kitchens, overdue electric bills, and church ladies praising Arthur while she stretched ground beef into 3 dinners. In her mind, every hot meal served to a stranger had been taken from her own table. Maybe pain can rot when a person protects it too long. The funeral had been the day before, at First Baptist on Maple Street. The sanctuary was packed wall to wall. Men removed their hats in the aisle. Women dabbed their eyes with folded tissues. People I had not seen in 20 years stood up one by one and told small stories about my grandfather. A roof patched after a storm, a utility bill quietly paid, a job reference written on a Sunday afternoon, a boy taught to change tractor oil instead of dropping out. Grant shook every hand. He lowered his voice perfectly. He said, Grandpa would have appreciated you coming, until the sentence sounded printed instead of felt. Mom stood beside him, squeezing his arm whenever someone mentioned the farm. Not crying, not really, watching. That was the first thing that chilled me. The second was the gate. Cedar Hollow's front gate had never been locked during daylight. Grandpa used to say a padlock was a sermon too, and most of the time it preached fear. Yet, there it was the morning after his burial, wrapped in new chain bright enough to look cruel. The old sign was gone. Free Saturday meals and skills training. Grandpa had painted those words himself in green letters. I could still see the shape of them in my memory, uneven and steady. Now, a luxury retreat smiled down from a plastic board. Rendered cabins, lantern-lit walking trails, a spa courtyard, a farm-to-table restaurant that looked like it had never smelled manure in its life. I heard tires on gravel behind me. Grant stepped out of his Navy SUV in a charcoal coat, his hair combed back, his grief tailored as neatly as his cuffs. Mom got out on the passenger side. She looked at me as if I were late to a meeting I had no right to attend. "You shouldn't be here alone," she said. "I came to clean out Grandpa's office." Grant gave me a soft little smile. "That won't be necessary, Evie." No one had called me Evie with love in that moment. He used it like a hand on the back of my neck. I looked past him to the sign. "What did you do?" "What had to be done," Mom said. The words landed harder than anger would have. Beyond the gate, Cedar Hollow sat quiet under a pale morning sky. No kitchen smoke, no sound from the repair shed, no Tyler jogging toward the barn with his backpack bouncing. The silence felt staged. I thought of Grandpa's rough hand covering mine when I was 12, guiding me through my first ledger entry for donated seed packets. "Evie," he had said, "kindness without records gets buried by people with better lawyers." At the time, I had laughed. Standing there, I finally understood he had not been joking. Grant reached into his coat and removed a folder, clean and white, the kind used by men who believe paper could make theft look respectable. "We need your signature on a simple family acknowledgement," he said. "Nothing dramatic, just confirming you won't interfere." I looked at the locked gate, then at my mother's dry eyes, then at my brother's polished smile. And for the first time since Grandpa Arthur died, grief stepped aside and made room for suspicion. The folder in Grant's hand looked harmless. White paper, blue tab, a silver clip holding everything in place. That was how men like my brother preferred their cruelty. Clean enough to pass across a conference table. Before I could take it, a small voice came from behind the hedge line. "Miss Evie?" Tyler Nash stood near the roadside ditch with his backpack hanging from one shoulder. He had grown taller since I last saw him, but his face still had the guarded look of a boy who had learned not to expect much from adults. Beside him was Owen Maddox, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, wearing the same faded army jacket he had worn to Grandpa's funeral. Lila Brooks stood a few steps away, holding her youngest daughter's hand while her older boy kicked at gravel, trying to pretend he was not scared. They were not visitors. They were not charity cases. They were Cedar Hollow. Tyler looked at the chain around the gate, then at the glossy retreat sign. "Does this mean I don't get to come back?" The question took the air out of me. For Grant, this place was acreage. For Tyler, it was the first adult who had ever said, "You're not stupid, son. You just haven't been taught by somebody patient." Grandpa Arthur had put a wrench in that boy's hand and a little pride back into his spine. I turned to Grant. "Open the gate." Grant sighed, as if I had asked him to explain taxes to a child. "Evie, don't do this in front of people." "In front of what people?" His eyes flicked toward Owen, Lila, and Tyler. Just for a second. Long enough. Mom stepped closer, her mouth tight. "They've been told the program is paused." "Paused?" Lila repeated. "Mrs. Hartwell, my kids eat here on Saturdays." Mom did not look at her. "Then I suggest you contact the county assistance office." Owen's jaw worked once, but he kept his voice even. "Mr. Hartwell said I was still caretaker through the end of the month." Grant smiled without warmth. "And we appreciate your service, Owen, truly. But access is limited during due diligence." That was when a black sedan pulled up behind Grant's SUV. A woman stepped out wearing a camel coat and the careful expression of someone trained to stay neutral until the paperwork turned ugly. Heather Sloan, Grant said quickly. Silver Oak Hospitality Group. Heather, this is my sister, Evelyn Reed. Heather extended her hand. Mrs. Reed, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, I said, shaking it. Has Silver Oak been told the community program was still operating? Less than 2 weeks before my grandfather went into the hospital? Heather's face did not change, but her hand lowered slowly. Our understanding is that regular operations had ceased. Grant cut in, because they had. No, I said, they hadn't. Mom gave a dry laugh. You live in Lexington. You show up for holidays and funerals. Don't stand here pretending you know more than the people who stayed. That one hit where she meant it to. I had left Millbridge because every room in our family house felt like a trial where I had been convicted before I spoke. But leaving did not erase what Grandpa built. It did not make Grant honest. Grant held out the folder again. The farm has been sold, Evie. This is just a family acknowledgement stating you won't interfere with closing. Heather's eyes moved to him. I heard it. Closing. Not sold. Not finished. Closing. I took the folder but did not open it yet. When is closing? Grant's smile tightened. That's not relevant. It is if you're lying at a locked gate. Evelyn, Mom warned. I opened the folder. The first page read, Family Non-Objection Acknowledgement. Beneath the title, my name had already been typed in the blank. Evelyn Margaret Reed, formerly Hartwell. My stomach turned at the phrase formerly, as if marriage had made me less my grandfather's blood. I scanned the first paragraph. It said I acknowledged Grant's authority as trustee. The second said I had no objection to the disposition of certain real property. The third said I waived any claim arising from community use representations made before Arthur Hartwell's death. There it was. Not grief, not family peace, a muzzle. I looked up. You want me to waive claims about the community use restrictions? Grant's voice dropped. I want you to stop making a scene. I haven't made one yet. Heather shifted her weight. She was listening now. I turned a page and saw references to a purchase and sell agreement, an earnest money deposit, and a development consulting advance already paid to Hartwell Realty Ventures, Grant's company, not the trust, not Cedar Hollow, Grant. The number was not printed in full, but enough showed to tell me this was not symbolic money. He had already been paid to move a future he did not own. I closed the folder. Who authorized you to take a consulting advance? Grant's face hardened. I'm trustee. A trustee manages property for the trust. He doesn't gut it for his own company. Mom stepped between us, anger finally warming her eyes. Your grandfather left Grant in charge because Grant understands the real world. Not everyone can live forever feeding strangers biscuits and calling it holiness. Lila flinched. Owen looked away. Tyler stared at the ground. I felt something inside me go still. Grandpa once told me people reveal themselves twice. First when they think nobody important is listening, and again when they realize everyone is. I handed the folder back to Grant. I'm not signing. His fingers did not take it at first. You don't understand what you're risking. No, I said. I understand exactly what you're afraid of. Heather's polite mask had thinned. Mr. Hartwell, Silver Oak will need clarification on any unresolved trust restrictions before proceeding. Grant shot her a look so sharp it could have cut glass. Then he took the folder from me and leaned close enough that only I could hear him. You always wanted to be Grandpa's favorite little saint, he said. Be careful, Evie. Saints usually end up with nothing but ashes. I looked past him at the chain gate, at Tyler's bent shoulders, at Lila's little girl pressing her face into her mother's coat. If it was legal, Grant, I said, you wouldn't need my silence. His smile vanished. Just for 1 second. But 1 second was enough. I left the front gate without touching the chain. That may sound small, but in a town like Millbridge, small things become testimony. If I had cut the lock, Grant would have called the sheriff before the bolt hit the dirt. If I had shouted, Mom would have turned my grief into evidence that I was unstable. If I had posted a video, half the county would have chosen sides before the truth had shoes on. Grandpa Arthur used to say, never hand a dishonest man the clean version of your mistake. So I drove half a mile down County Road 18 and pulled onto the shoulder near the old service lane. Owen Maddox followed in his pickup, slow and steady, dust rising behind him. He stepped out with a ring of keys in his hand. Miss Evie, I need to say this plain. My caretaker agreement runs through the end of the month. I'm allowed to access the community buildings, the livestock areas, and maintenance storage. I'm not letting you into your mama's private quarters or Grant's files. I don't want their things, I said. I want Grandpa's program records. Owen studied my face, then nodded. That I can live with. The side gate groaned when he opened it. The sound went through me like an old hymn sung off key. Cedar Hollow looked the same at first glance. The gravel path, the leaning fence, the kitchen chimney, the barn roof patch with mismatched tin. But the quiet was wrong. A working farm has breath in it. This place was holding its breath. Owen walked beside me to the office attached to the old tool shed. Mr. Hartwell kept copies of everything, he said. Meals served, classes taught, who came, who left, who needed winter coats. Drove Grant crazy. Grant hates paper unless it makes him money. Owen gave a tired half smile. Your grandpa said paper is what keeps Mercy from getting called a hobby. The office smelled like dust, coffee grounds, and the peppermint candies Grandpa kept in the top drawer. His chair was still pushed back from the desk, as if he had only stepped out to check the rain gauge. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I opened drawers. The first held meal logs. Saturday, biscuits, bean soup, donated ham, collard greens, coffee, pantry boxes. The second held sign-in sheets for tractor repair, basic carpentry, bookkeeping, and kitchen sanitation. Tyler's name appeared 6 times in the last month alone, his handwriting growing less jagged each week. The third drawer stuck. Owen handed me a flathead screwdriver. He'd forgive you for that. Inside was a stack of thank you notes tied with twine and a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandpa's square, stubborn hand. For Evelyn, when they start calling kindness a liability. My fingers shook when I opened it. Evie, if you are reading this, somebody has decided Cedar Hollow is worth more dead than alive. Do not argue with their feelings. Feelings will change with the room. Records will not. Kindness only survives when it has structure. Find the binder, find the restrictions, and remember, Grant never lowers himself to look where honest work is kept. I read the last line twice. Owen saw my face change. You know where he means. The root cellar. The root cellar sat beneath the back of the storage barn, dug into the cool side of a slope. Grandpa used to store seed potatoes there, along with jars of nails, spare tractor belts, and things he said needed darkness more than decoration. Grant hated it. As a teenager, he once refused to carry crates down there because it smelled like poor people and dirt. Grandpa made him carry 2 more. The wooden steps complained under our weight. Owen held the flashlight while I moved aside burlap sacks and an old shelf bowled by rusted coffee cans. Behind it, tucked into a gap in the stone wall, was a waterproof storage box. Not hidden like treasure, hidden like a warning. Inside were photocopies, labeled tabs, and a blue binder marked Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust. My breath caught at the first page. The farm had been transferred into the trust 5 years earlier. Grant was named initial trustee, yes, but the language underneath tightened like barbed wire. Community purpose. 25-year continuation. Independent review before termination. Cedar Hollow was not Grant's to sell like a vacant lot. It was not Mom's consolation prize. It was not mine either. It belonged to a promise. I turned pages faster, searching for the clause that would matter most. Removal of trustee, successor authority, emergency protection of program assets. The tab was there, the pages were not. Someone had taken only that section and left the bones around it, hoping nobody would notice the missing heart. Owen lowered the flashlight. Is it bad? I closed the binder carefully, because anger makes hands careless. It's worse than bad, I said. It means Grandpa knew this could happen. Outside, wind dragged dry leaves against the barn door. I held the binder to my chest and understood something that settled deeper than fear. Grant had not started this after the funeral. He had started it while Grandpa was still dying. By 10 the next morning, I stood inside the Millbridge County Courthouse with copied mill logs in my purse and Grandpa's binder locked in my trunk. The place smelled like floor wax, old paper, and burnt coffee. I had been there as a girl when Grandpa filed permits. That morning, waiting in line felt like war. The county clerk had silver hair, red glasses, and the tired patience of someone who had seen families fight over land. I need certified copies tied to Cedar Hollow Farm, I said. Arthur Hartwell, Grant Hartwell, or Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust. Her face softened. You're Arthur's granddaughter. Yes, ma'am. He helped my son once, she said. Wouldn't take a dime back. That was Cedar Hollow. People carried pieces of Grandpa and stories they only told when his name opened the door. She typed for several minutes. We won't have the whole trust here. We keep what affects title. That's what I need. The first document was the deed. Arthur Hartwell transferring the farm into Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust 5 years earlier. The second was a memorandum naming Grant as initial trustee. I made myself breathe. Grant had told the truth about that part, which made every lie around it harder to spot. Then the clerk frowned. There's a reference line. I leaned closer. Subject to community purpose restrictions and continued use provisions as set forth in trust instrument and related attachments. There it was. Not the whole truth, but its footprint. Grant could not pretend the restrictions were something I invented out of grief. I need that certified, I said. Her stamp came down hard enough to sound personal. I asked if anything recent had been supplied for the pending transaction. She found a due diligence summary attached to the sale. My pulse changed when I read the sentence Silver Oak had been given. Community program ceased ordinary operation prior to Settler's death. Settler. Grandpa reduced to a legal role. His kitchen, his fields, his people reduced to a lie dressed for business. I opened my folder. 12 days before Grandpa's stroke. 41 hot plates, 18 pantry boxes, 6 trainees in the shed, 3 volunteers in the kitchen. Tyler's name sat near the bottom, grease smudged across his signature. Grant had not misunderstood. He had rewritten Cedar Hollow while Grandpa was still breathing. The clerk watched me place the pages back in order. You got counsel? Not yet. Well, then start with paper, she said. Folks can curse paper, even pray over paper, but they can't make it forget. I paid for the certified copies. It was the first money I had spent not mourning Grandpa, but defending him. Outside, 2 men at Millie's Diner saw me through the window. One nodded. The other looked away too fast.
Mom had already been talking.
I spread the deed, the memorandum, and the due diligence summary across the passenger seat. Together, they proved Grant's clean version of the truth had a crack in it. I started the engine with one thought fixed in my mind. If Grant had lied to Silver Oak about the program being dead, I needed to know what else he had promised using land he did not truly own. Bluegrass Community Bank sat on Main Street in a brick building with white columns out front. Grandpa Arthur had opened my first savings account there when I was 12, carrying my birthday money in a coffee can. A woman should know where her money sleeps, he told me. That morning, I walked in with certified county copies in my purse and a calm face I had to earn step by step. Marcy Dobbs looked up from the manager's desk, pearls at her throat, reading glasses on a chain. "Evelyn Hartwell," she said, then corrected herself. "Reed now, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am." "I was sorry about Arthur." "Thank you." I did not sit until she offered. In Millbridge, manners could be armor. "I need to understand a recent trustee activity tied to Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust," I said. "Especially anything using the farm as collateral." Marcy's expression barely moved. Barely was enough. "I can't discuss confidential bank records without proper authority." "I know." "Then I can say this in general," she said. "When a trustee signs banking documents, a bank relies on that trustee's certification of authority. If that authority is challenged later, everyone has a problem. Everyone, not just Grant." I placed the certified memorandum on her desk. "This says Grant is trustee, subject to community purpose restrictions." Marcy read that line twice. A careful person would ask for the full trust instrument. Her voice stayed gentle. The meaning did not. Grant had acted like trustee meant owner. A trustee could sign, borrow, and sound powerful to people who wanted a clean deal. But a trustee could also betray the very thing he was sworn to protect. Marcy lowered her voice. "If you believe trust assets were pledged improperly, your attorney can request an accounting." "Well, I don't have an attorney yet." "Then get one before your brother gets more creative." Before I left, she slid a public-facing development summary across the desk. This was circulated with town materials, nothing confidential. I looked down. Cedar Hollow Farm, redevelopment-ready rural acreage, existing auxiliary residential structures, temporary occupants to be cleared prior to development. Temporary occupants. Owen, Lila, Agnes, Tyler. People with names, histories, wounds, and reasons to believe Cedar Hollow had not been built for men like Grant to call them clutter. Outside, I sat in my car and built the map in my head. Grant had a purchase agreement, but no closing. He had taken a consulting advance through Hartwell Realty Ventures. He had told Silver Oak the program was already dead. Now there were hints of a short-term loan resting on Cedar Hollow's back like a boot. It was not one bad decision. It was a ladder. Make the program look dead. Clear the people. Close fast. Cash out. Repay whatever he had risked. Leave the truth buried under spa brochures and gravel paths. My phone buzzed. "Grant says you're harassing people now. Come home before you embarrass yourself any further." I stared until the screen dimmed, then typed back one sentence. "No, Mom. I'm learning what you both hoped I'd never ask." Walter Keene lived outside Lexington, in a white ranch house with a brass plate by the door that still read Keene and Voss, Attorneys at Law. He opened the door before I knocked twice. "Evelyn Hartwell," he said. "Read now." "I know. Old men keep old names." "I need to ask about Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust." "I'm retired."
"I'm not asking you to represent me."
"Oh, that is usually what people say right before they do." I took Grandpa's envelope from my bag. He left this. Mr. Keene did not invite me in until he saw the handwriting. Then his face changed enough to tell me the dead had just entered the conversation. We sat at his kitchen table while he read the letter. When he finished, he removed his glasses. "Your grandfather feared this day." "Because of Grant?" "Because Arthur understood blood does not make a person honest. It only makes betrayal hurt closer." I laid the binder copies on the table. "The removal section is missing." Mr. Keene looked at the empty tab. "Of course it is." "So it existed." "It more than existed. Arthur insisted on it. He would not hand me a file. He was too careful for that. Instead, he spoke like a man placing stones across a river." Grant was named initial trustee because Arthur hoped responsibility might mature him. But Arthur added a protection clause. If Grant, or Patricia acting with him, attempted to sell, mortgage, transfer, terminate community operations, or pressure program residents out for private gain, Grant could be removed. My throat tightened. "And then?" "You became successor trustee." The room did not feel victorious. It felt heavier. "Do not look relieved," Mr. Keene said. "Arthur did not leave you a kingdom. He left you a leash." "A leash?" "On yourself. You would form an independent board, publish annual financials, preserve the community purpose, and submit to audit. You could not sell Cedar Hollow. You could not live off it. You could only protect it." That sounded exactly like Grandpa. Where is the original appendix? When I retired, my active estate files went to another firm. A younger partner there later handled real estate work for Grant. I will not accuse anyone without proof. But you think it was buried. I think some papers grow legs when enough money walks into the room. Then he looked toward the window. Arthur made a backup, and my pulse kicked. He gave a copy to Agnes Miller. "Agnes from the farm office?" "The same. 18 years of books, pantry logs, receipts." Arthur trusted her because she was afraid of waste and allergic to lies. "Why hasn't she come forward?" "Because people living under another man's roof learn the price of bravery. If Grant has threatened her housing, she may be guarding the only door she has left." At the front door, he stopped me. "Evelyn, do this clean. Your brother will want mud. Do not give him any." Then he added, quieter, "Some people inherit land. Others inherit the duty not to disgrace it." By the time I reached my car, the afternoon had gone gray. Grant had money, paperwork, and Mom's anger. I had a missing appendix, a frightened woman, and a promise written by a dead man who had known his family too well. Agnes Miller's cottage sat at the far edge of Cedar Hollow, where the pasture dipped toward a line of sycamore trees. It was one of 3 small transition homes Grandpa had restored with donated lumber, church volunteers, and more faith than money. The porch light was on in the middle of the afternoon. That told me enough. People leave lights burning in daylight when they are afraid the dark might come early. I parked near the gravel bin and walked up slowly, keeping my hands where she could see them. The curtains moved once, then went still. "Mrs. Miller?" I called. "It's Evelyn Reed, Arthur's granddaughter." No answer. "I'm not here to force you into anything." A board creaked inside. "I just need to know whether Grant has threatened you." The door opened 2 inches. Agnes Miller looked smaller than I remembered. She had once run Cedar Hollow's books like a church organist ran hymns, precise, stern, impossible to fool. Now her gray hair was pinned crookedly, and her hand gripped the doorframe as if the house itself might be taken if she loosened her fingers. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you shouldn't be seen here. That sounds like something Grant wants you to believe." Her eyes flicked past me toward the lane. "He has men driving by. I saw one yesterday." She swallowed. "Then you know." "May I come in?" For a long second, I thought she would close the door. Then she stepped back. The cottage smelled of lemon cleaner and fear. On the kitchen table sat a mug of untouched tea, a Bible, and a folded notice printed on expensive paper. I did not touch it until she nodded. Notice of program termination. It was not an eviction order. It did not carry a court stamp, but it wore legal language like brass knuckles. Vacate before closing. Failure to cooperate may result in further action. Program occupancy subject to trustee discretion. Grant had written a threat that looked just polite enough to scare the poor and fool the comfortable. "He told me I had 30 days, Agnes said. Then his assistant called and said people who created trouble could be out sooner. "He can't just throw you out without process." Agnes gave a tired little laugh. "Process costs money, honey. Fear is free." That sentence hurt more than shouting would have. I sat across from her. "Mr. Keene told me Grandpa trusted you with something." Her face closed. "I am not asking you to hand it over today," I said quickly. "I'm asking what you need to feel safe." Agnes stared at me as if safety were a language she had forgotten. "I wasn't silent because I was loyal to Grant," she said. "I was silent because I was housed." The words filled the kitchen and stayed there. Outside, a truck moved slowly along the lane. Agnes turned pale. I looked through the curtain and saw Cody Vance behind the wheel, one elbow hanging out, eyes fixed on the cottage. He had done odd jobs for Grant for years and always smiled like a man waiting to be paid for silence. I raised my phone and took a picture before he passed. Agnes saw me do it. Something in her face shifted. Not courage yet. Maybe the beginning of anger. "Arthur gave me an envelope," she said. "Told me if family ever started rewriting memory, I should remember numbers don't grieve and documents don't flatter." Oh, that sounds like him. I put it somewhere Grant would never look. I almost smiled. Everybody in this family has a place like that. Agnes reached for the Bible, then stopped. "No, not yet." "I understand." "No, you don't." Her voice sharpened, and for 1 second, the old bookkeeper returned. "You can drive back to Lexington. I sleep under the roof your brother is threatening to take." "You're right," I said. "I can leave. That's why I won't ask you to stand alone." I told her about the trust restrictions, about the need for a board, about my promise that if I became trustee, no resident would be punished for telling the truth. I did not decorate it. I did not call her brave. People in danger do not need applause. They need a plan. Agnes listened, one hand resting on the folded notice. At last, she said, "Your grandfather once told me kindness needs witnesses." He wrote something like that to me. Her eyes filled, but no tear fell. "Then bring me one," she said. "Bring Mr. Keene. Bring a lawyer. Bring somebody who can make sure Grant cannot bury me under paper before I open my mouth." I stood and folded the notice back exactly as I had found it. On the porch, she caught my sleeve. "Evelyn." "Yes, ma'am?" "If I do this, I want Lila's children protected first, and Tyler. That boy is one bad accusation away from being thrown to wolves who wear badges." I promise. Agnes held my gaze, searching for Arthur in me and perhaps finding only a woman trying not to shake. Then you'd better make that promise stronger than your brother's money. By Sunday evening, my mother had taken the war to Facebook. She posted a picture of Grandpa Arthur from 10 years earlier, smiling beside a row of tomato plants, and wrote a paragraph that made my stomach turn. She said Grant was trying to save the family from crushing taxes and impossible upkeep. She said I had chosen Lexington over Millbridge and only returned when Cedar Hollow became valuable. She said I was using vulnerable people as a shield because I could not bear that Grandpa had trusted my brother with responsibility. By morning, the post had 312 reactions, 97 comments, and enough poison to water a field. Some people defended Grandpa's work. Others asked why I had not been around more. A woman from church wrote, "There are two sides to every story." Well, that one hurt most because cowards love that sentence. It lets them stand in the smoke and call it balance. At Millie's diner, the bell over the door rang when I stepped inside, and conversation thinned like soup stretched too far. The owner, June Milligan, poured coffee without meat in my eyes. "You Hartwells always bleed behind closed doors," she said. "Why should this town believe this time is about us?" I could have defended myself. I could have listed every Saturday Grandpa missed his own comfort to keep Cedar Hollow open. But I heard Jenna's voice in my head. "Do it clean." So I said, because Grant locked the kitchen before he filed a single lawful order. June finally looked at me. Then her eyes slid past my shoulder, and I knew he was there. Grant stood by the register in a wool coat, smiling like a man who had just donated to a hospital wing. "Morning, Evie." I set $2 beside my untouched coffee. "Grant?" He lowered his voice just enough for the booths nearby to strain toward us. "You're upsetting people who don't deserve to be dragged into family business." "No," I said. "You drag them in when you call them temporary occupants." His smile stayed. His eyes didn't. By noon, the side consequences started landing. Olin called first. Private security had blocked him from the woodworking shed, though his caretaker agreement still had 2 weeks left. The guard told him maintenance access had been reclassified. Lila called next. The community kitchen lock had been changed. Her Saturday pantry box was gone. She tried to sound calm, but I could hear her youngest crying in the background. Then Tyler texted me a photo. A red paint can sat beside his old Ford pickup. Behind it, the new Hartwell Ridge sign had been splashed with ugly streaks across the word luxury. I called him immediately. "I didn't do it, Miss Evie," he said before hello. His voice cracked on the last word. "I swear on my mama, I didn't." "Where are you?" "By the gate. Security says they called Mr. Hartwell. Do not argue. Do not touch the can. Do not leave until I get there." When I arrived, Tyler stood with both hands visible, face white under his ball cap. The security guard had his arms folded. Grant leaned against his SUV, disappointed in a way only practiced liars can look. "Vandalism now?" he said. "Grandpa would be ashamed." Tyler flinched like he had been struck. I stepped between them. "Say my grandfather's name again to shame a 17-year-old, and I will make sure everyone in this county hears what kind of man needs a child to look guilty." Grant's jaw tightened. The paint can was too clean. No fingerprints in the wet rim. No red on Tyler's hands, jeans, or truck door. Whoever planted it thought fear would do the rest. Dear listeners, if you believe Evelyn should keep fighting for Cedar Hollow, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell her what you would do if your own family twisted kindness into a crime. Because one hidden envelope is still waiting, and the truth behind it may change everything. I photographed the can, the sign, Tyler's hands, the guard's badge, and Grant's face when he realized I was not crying. "You're getting dramatic," he said. "No, Grant, I'm getting careful." Lila arrived with both children still in school clothes. Her little girl looked at the locked kitchen door and whispered, "Mama, are we bad now?" And that broke something in the air. Lila knelt and pulled her close. "No, baby. Some grown-ups just forgot how to be good." Across the yard, Cedar Hollow's windows reflected the afternoon sun. The farm looked open, peaceful, almost ordinary. But the kitchen was locked, the shed was guarded, a boy had been framed with a paint can, and my mother was online telling the town I had come home to steal. I stood there with my phone full of pictures and my heart full of heat I did not dare waste. Grandpa had taught me that a locked gate was never just a gate. It was a confession. By the time I reached Lexington, the sky had turned the color of dishwater. Our little house sat on a quiet street near a row of maples, the kind of place people called stable because they did not know how many bills could hide under one roof. Matt's pickup was in the driveway. The garage light was on. He was inside at the kitchen table, still in his work shirt, a bank envelope beside his elbow. He looked up when I came in, and I knew before he spoke that he had already decided to be careful instead of honest. "Evie," he said, "we need to talk." Nothing good ever follows those words when a man says them like he is bracing for weather. I set my purse on the counter. "About Cedar Hollow?" "About us." That stopped me. Matt rubbed both hands over his face. He was a kind man in the ordinary ways. He changed the oil in my car before long drives. He remembered how I took my coffee. He held my hand in hospital hallways. But kindness under pressure is where the real measurement begins. "You're going up against your family, a developer, maybe a bank," he said. "Jenna won't be cheap forever. What if this drags on for years?" "It won't if we move fast." "And if we lose?" I heard the fear under the question, not cruelty, fear. Sometimes fear can sound almost reasonable until you notice what it is asking you to surrender. "We lose money," I said. "Maybe time, maybe comfort." He looked at the envelope. I followed his eyes. Student loan statement. Past due notice tucked halfway under it. Matt had carried that debt since before our marriage. He wanted to open a small repair garage someday. 3 bays, honest prices, no dealership games. We had talked about it the way couples talk about distant vacations, believing desire itself could hold the shape of a future. "Grant knows about the loans, doesn't he?" I asked. Matt went still. The room changed. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and stopped. "Matt." He looked away. I did not raise my voice. Raising it would have given him somewhere to hide. "When did he talk to you?" "At Millie's, after the funeral." My stomach turned slowly, like a key in a lock. "What did he offer?" "He didn't hand me money." "That is not what I asked." Matt pushed back from the table. "He said if you signed the acknowledgement and stopped making this a public fight, he could help us get clear. Pay down the loan through a consulting arrangement. Maybe connect me with investors for the garage." A consulting arrangement? That was Grant's favorite perfume for rot. "And you were going to tell me when?" "I didn't take it." "But you carried it home." His face tightened. "I was trying to protect us." "No, you were trying to keep peace with a man who is starving people behind a locked kitchen door. That's not fair. Neither is planting a paint can beside a 17-year-old's truck." He stood then, anger rising because shame needed a disguise. "You think I don't care? I care. But I also know your family. They don't just fight. They bury people in paperwork and call it Sunday dinner. For a second, I saw the man I married, tired, scared, trying to imagine a future where love did not come with legal fees. Then I saw the phone in his hand, and the truth pressed harder. Show me the messages. Evie, show me. He hesitated just long enough to answer. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My brother asked you to help muzzle me, and you hid it because part of you wanted the offer to stay possible. His eyes shone. I wanted one thing in our life not to be a fight. I stepped closer. Are you afraid we'll lose, Matt? I asked. Or are you afraid I'll become someone you don't get to rescue? The question hit him like a slap he could not call unfair. He had loved being needed. I had loved being safe with him. Neither of us had noticed the difference until Cedar Hollow pulled the boards off the windows. Matt sat back down. I didn't know how to stand next to you in this, he said. Then don't stand in my way. That was the only mercy I had left to give him. I slept on the couch that night with my coat folded under my head and Grandpa's letter in my purse beside me. Around 2 a.m, I heard Matt walking quietly through the kitchen. He stopped near the couch, stood there long enough for apology to have a chance, then went back to the bedroom without saying it. By dawn, my neck ached, my eyes burned, and my marriage felt like a house with the foundation cracked beneath clean paint. My phone buzzed before sunrise. It was Owen. Miss Evie, he said, voice rough. Somebody broke into Mr. Hartwell's office. I drove to Cedar Hollow with coffee untouched and Matt's silence sitting in my chest. The farm looked gray at dawn, all wet grass and fence lines. Owen waited by the tool shed with a flashlight in one hand and a crowbar in the other. I didn't touch anything after I saw the door, he said. The office lock hung crooked, forced by someone who knew where pressure mattered. Inside, Grandpa Arthur's desk had been dragged from the wall. Drawers gaped. File boxes lay on their sides. Mill logs were scattered across the floor. The thank you notes were gone. So were sign-in sheets, pantry records, and Tyler's training folder. Whoever came here had not taken random paper. They had taken proof that Cedar Hollow was alive. Owen stood in the doorway, jaw locked. This is not burglary for money. No, I said. This is burglary for memory. Grant arrived 20 minutes later in a black overcoat. Cody Vance sat in a truck near the road. Grant sighed. Evie, this is getting embarrassing. Interesting word for a break-in. You had access yesterday. Now papers are missing. How do I know you didn't stage this? Owen took one step forward. Careful. Grant ignored him. You keep creating emergencies right before closing. A judge will notice. I looked at the ruined office and kept my voice flat. Then let's make sure the judge sees everything. After Grant left, Owen remembered a camera over the horse paddock. Grandpa had installed it after coyotes got into the chicken run. The camera still held a memory card. We watched the footage in Owen's truck. At 12:43 a.m., headlights rolled past the barn. Cody's pickup stopped beside the office. A man in a hooded jacket went inside with 2 boxes and came back with one. The image was grainy, but the cracked left taillight glowed like a signature. My hands shook when the video ended. I'm posting it, I said. Today. By noon, I was in Lexington at Jenna Whitcomb's office above a dental clinic. Jenna watched the footage once, then again without sound. Do not post this, she said. He framed Tyler. He scared Agnes. He broke into Grandpa's office. And if you put this online, Grant's attorney will say you contaminated public opinion and turned evidence into entertainment. So I just sit on it? No, we copy it. We document chain of custody. We attach it to an emergency filing. I hated how right she sounded. Jenna pulled a yellow legal pad toward her. We have breach of fiduciary duty, misrepresentation to Silver Oak, a collateral issue with the bank, intimidation, retaliation, and possible evidence tampering. Possible? Courtrooms like careful words. Careful words survive. Then she tapped the missing section in Grandpa's binder. But without the removal appendix, Grant can still drag this long enough to close. We need Agnes. I thought of Agnes's lit porch, Tyler's white face, Matt's hidden messages, and Mom turning grief into gossip. Jenna's voice softened. Evelyn, rage is fuel. It is not steering. I put my phone face down on her desk. Then steer, I said. Jenna began turning our bruises into exhibits, one page at a time. Millbridge Town Hall had never looked so full. Folding chairs covered the room, from the flagpole to the back wall. Men in work boots stood with arms crossed. Church ladies whispered behind paper programs. Small business owners leaned in the doorway, listening for numbers that might mean rent paid on time. A town that had ignored Cedar Hollow's locked kitchen now came dressed for opportunity. Grant understood that better than I did. He stood near the front beside Heather Sloan and a projector screen, looking clean, calm, and generous. Behind him was the first slide, Hartwell Ridge Luxury Retreat, honoring the past, building the future. I almost laughed. Men like Grant never bury what they destroy. They rename it. Mom sat in the front row with a tissue folded in her hand. She did not need to cry yet. She only needed people to see she was prepared to. Heather began with polished professionalism. She spoke of sustainable tourism, local hiring, agritourism partnerships, walking trails, restored barns, and a farm-to-table restaurant that would celebrate the land's heritage. Each sentence had been sanded smooth until there was no blood left on it. Then Grant stepped forward. My grandfather loved this town, he said. No one disputes that. But love has to mature into responsibility. A few people nodded. He continued, voice warm enough to pass for humble. Cedar Hollow served a purpose for many years, but the program has slowed. Costs rose, buildings aged, insurance became difficult. The question is not whether the past mattered. The question is whether we let the past keep Millbridge from a better future. There it was, the old trick. Turn the victim into the obstacle. He clicked to another slide. 80 seasonal jobs, increased tax revenue, vendor opportunities, tourism growth. A rendering showed smiling guests drinking wine beside a fire pit where Grandpa used to hand out winter coats. Beside me, June from the diner whispered, 80 jobs is 80 jobs. I did not blame her for wanting hope. That was what made Grant dangerous. He had wrapped his greed in something the town truly needed. When public comment opened, I walked to the microphone with my folder under one arm. My legs felt steady, which surprised me. My name is Evelyn Reed, I said. Arthur Hartwell was my grandfather. Grant's smile sharpened. I turned toward the room, not him. Cedar Hollow did not die before my grandfather did. 12 days before his stroke, 41 hot meals were served. 18 pantry boxes went out. 6 trainees signed into the repair shed. 3 volunteers worked the kitchen. I lifted copies, not originals. Jenna had drilled that into me. This is not nostalgia. These are records. Murmurs moved through the chairs. I read names next. Not all of them. Enough. Owen Maddox, veteran and caretaker. Lila Brooks, mother of 2. Tyler Nash, student trainee. Agnes Miller, bookkeeper. Teresa Lane, who learned greenhouse work after her husband died. Paul Granger, who got sober long enough to keep a job because Grandpa gave him one place to be on Saturday mornings. Grant stepped toward the microphone. Evelyn obtained internal documents without authorization. I entered with a caretaker into community program space, I said. And the county records are public. His eyes flashed. I opened another page. The financials Grant circulated show Cedar Hollow as failing. But several expenses listed under farm operations appear tied to Hartwell Realty Ventures, including travel, client meals, and a consulting retainer that does not belong in the community program budget. The room changed temperature. Mom stood so quickly her chair scraped. How dare you? I looked at her. Which part? Her mouth trembled. Then she did what she had been waiting to do. My father is barely in the ground, she said, voice breaking beautifully. And my daughter comes home to accuse her own family in front of strangers? A woman in the second row whispered, shameful. Grant placed a hand on Mom's shoulder. Perfect timing, perfect picture. She is grieving, he told the room. We all are. But grief does not give anyone the right to steal files, smear a trustee, and invent restrictions no one has produced. My folder suddenly felt thin. Someone near the back called, "Where's this appendix, Evelyn?" I had no answer I could safely give. Grant saw it. So did Mom. So did the town. For one breathless moment, Cedar Hollow, Grandpa's promise, Tyler's future, Lila's pantry, Owen's dignity, all of it balanced on a missing piece of paper while my brother smiled like a man watching a door close. Then the back door opened. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft metal click under the weight of too many voices. But every head turned. Agnes Miller stood in the doorway with Walter Keene beside her. She wore her good Navy coat, the one she used for funerals and bank appointments, and both hands were wrapped around a manila envelope pressed tight against her chest. She looked terrified. She came in anyway. Grant's face changed before he could stop it. That was the first confession. Mom whispered, "Oh, Lord." Agnes walked down the center aisle slowly. The room did not move. Even the folding chairs seemed to hold their breath. Walter stayed half a step behind her, not guiding her, not rescuing her, simply bearing witness. When Agnes reached the front, she looked at me once. I understood what that look cost her. "Mrs. Miller," Grant said, voice smooth but thin. "This is not the time." Agnes turned toward him. "Men who hide clocks always say that." A sound moved through the room. Not laughter, recognition. Walter took the microphone. "My name is Walter Keene. I drafted the Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust for Arthur Hartwell." Grant stepped forward. "You are retired, Walter." "I am old," Walter said, "not dead." Agnes opened the envelope. Her fingers shook so badly I wanted to take the pages from her, but I did not. Some truths belong first to the person brave enough to carry them. Walter examined the first page, then the notary block, then Arthur's signature. "This is a true copy of the trustee removal appendix executed with the original trust documents." Grant said, "That could be anything." Walter looked over his glasses. "It is my work, Mr. Hartwell. I recognize my own sentences, even when they inconvenience the ambitious." A few people shifted in their seats. Jenna stepped from the side wall. I had not even seen her enter. She took the copy only after Agnes nodded, then addressed the room with the calm tone of a woman who knew paper could cut deeper than shouting. "The appendix states that if the initial trustee attempts to sell, mortgage, transfer, terminate community operations, or pressure program occupants for private financial gain, That trustee may be removed and replaced by Evelyn Reed as successor trustee.
Grant laughed once. May be removed. That is not automatic. No, Jenna said. That is why courts exist. She turned another page. It also requires any successor trustee to form an independent oversight board, publish annual financial reports, preserve the community purpose, and submit to audit. Mrs.
Reed cannot take Cedar Hollow for herself. The room changed again. I felt it. The suspicion that I had come home to steal land lost its footing. Mom stood, clutching her tissue. Arthur never told us that. Agnes looked at her. Maybe because he knew what you would do if he did. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. Heather Sloan had gone very still near the projector. Jenna handed her a copy of the appendix and another page from her folder. There is one more item Silver Oak should review, Jenna said. Grant's head snapped toward her. Jenna did not look at him. An email from Mr. Hartwell to your acquisition team dated 9 days ago. Heather read silently at first. Then her face hardened. Jenna read aloud for everyone else. Temporary occupants and remaining program holdovers will be cleanup problems before closing. Cleanup problems. No one coughed. No one whispered. The phrase hung above us like smoke after a gunshot. Lila lowered her eyes and pulled her children closer. Tyler stared at Grant with the kind of hurt no 17-year-old should have to carry. Owen stood in the back, his old army jacket dark under the fluorescent lights. His voice came low but clear. Your granddad saved you once, Grant. Grant turned. Don't. Owen kept going. You were 22. Short money missing from a county fundraiser account. Arthur could have let the sheriff handle it. Instead, he made you work Cedar Hollow all summer, cleaning stalls, fixing fence, serving meals. Said a young man could still learn humility if shame didn't kill him first. The room looked at Grant as if seeing him under different light. Owen's jaw tightened. The place you're selling is the place that kept your name clean. Grant said nothing. I stepped to the microphone. My voice did not tremble. Grandpa didn't leave you a farm to make you rich, Grant. He left you a responsibility to see if it could save you. Heather closed her laptop. Silver Oak will suspend due diligence pending full review of all trust documents, she said. Mr. Hartwell, our counsel will contact you directly. And for the first time since I had seen that locked gate, Grant looked around the room and found no easy face waiting to protect him. For a moment after Heather closed her laptop, nobody moved. Grant stood under the projector light with one hand curled at his side, the way he used to stand when we were children and Grandpa caught him lying. Not sorry, not broken, only furious that the room had stopped admiring him. Then Mom rose. She had saved her tears for the perfect time, but perfection had passed her by. Her face was flushed now, her tissue crushed in one hand. All of you loved Arthur when it cost you nothing, she said. The room turned toward her. Patricia, Grant warned. No, she snapped. Let them hear it. Let every person in this room hear what sainthood looks like when you live under the same roof with it. I felt Walter go still beside Agnes. Mom pointed toward the old Cedar Hollow photos on the screen. He gave away food while I counted coupons. He fixed roofs for strangers while our own porch rotted. He was everybody's hero. And I was the woman expected to smile while he emptied himself into this town. No one interrupted her. That made it worse. Pain can ask for sympathy. Resentment demands payment. I stepped toward her. Mom, Cedar Hollow was not yours to punish. Her eyes locked on mine. He owed us more than he owed them. Lila pulled her children closer. Tyler looked down.
Owen's face folded into something older than anger. Mom kept going, voice cracking but loud. Yes, I knew Grant wanted to close the program. Yes, I knew he was selling. And I was glad. Glad. Because for once,
this family was going to receive something instead of watching Arthur hand it out to everyone with a sad story and an empty plate. There it was. Not confusion, not paperwork, not concern over taxes. A confession with grief wrapped around it. June Milligan stood from the third row. Patricia, my brother got sober because Arthur gave him work. Mom turned on her. And did that pay my light bill? The room recoiled. I did not have to answer. She had done it herself. She had shown them that Grant was not the only one trying to bury Cedar Hollow. He wanted profit. She wanted revenge against the goodness that had made her feel small. Grant grabbed her elbow. We're leaving.
Don't touch me like I'm the problem, she hissed. Heather passed them without looking back, her phone already at her ear. Near the exit, I heard her say, "We need counsel on title exposure and incomplete disclosure immediately." By the next morning, the first domino fell.
Jenna called while I was still in the motel room I had taken because I could not face Lexington yet. Silver Oak has formally suspended due diligence, she said. Their counsel requested the full trust file and all communications from Grant regarding program status. I closed my eyes. Good. Not enough, but good. An hour later, Marcy Dobbs left a voicemail so carefully worded it could have worn Sunday gloves. Bluegrass Community Bank was conducting an internal review of recent trustee certifications connected to Cedar Hollow. No further action would proceed until authority and restrictions were clarified. Translation: Grant's money was freezing. At noon, Matt came to the motel. He stood outside my door with red eyes and the stiff posture of a man carrying something heavier than pride. I almost did not let him in. Then he held up his phone. I should have given you this before, he said. Inside, he scrolled to the messages. Grant, help me calm Evie down before she ruins herself. Grant, if she signs, I can make your loan problem disappear. Grant, call it consulting. Nobody has to know. Grant, you want that garage someday or not? I read them twice. The words did not surprise me. That was the saddest part. Betrayal loses its shock when the pattern finally shows its face. Matt swallowed. I didn't take it. But you kept the door open. He nodded because lying would have been another insult. I was scared, he said. I looked at our bills and saw your family coming at us from every side. And I thought if I waited long enough, maybe the choice would make itself. That is how people like Grant win, I said. They count on decent people waiting too long. He sat on the edge of the chair, not close to me. I'm sorry, Evie. I forwarded the messages to Jenna while he watched. Then I handed the phone back. This helps the case, Matt, I said. It doesn't heal what you broke. His face crumpled, but he did not argue. Maybe that was the first honest thing he had done since the funeral. Outside the motel window, traffic moved along the highway toward lives that had not cracked open in public. Mine had. Cedar Hollow had. Grant's polished lie had. And for the first time, the cracks were letting light through. Jenna filed before sunrise. By 8:30, the emergency petition sat in the Millbridge County Courthouse with more weight than any speech I could have given. Temporary restraining order, preservation of trust assets, suspension of closing, prohibition against intimidation of program occupants, emergency appointment of successor trustee. Those words looked cold on paper. To me, they sounded like the first breath Cedar Hollow had taken since the gate was locked. Because the trust served a community purpose, Jenna also sent notice to the Kentucky Attorney General's office. She said it mattered. A family could argue over Grandma's silver in private. A charitable purpose trust was different. Cedar Hollow had fed people, housed people, trained people. Grant could not drag it into a back room and call the damage personal. The hearing was held in a small courtroom with scratched wooden benches and fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. Grant arrived in a dark suit, Patricia beside him in pearls and a black coat, her face arranged into grief again. Their attorney carried a leather briefcase and the kind of confidence men rent by the hour. I sat behind Jenna with Agnes on one side and Owen on the other. Lila was there too, hands folded over her purse. Tyler sat in the back row with his cap in his lap, trying to look older than 17. Matt came in quietly and sat 2 benches behind me. I did not turn around. All rise. Judge Harlan entered without drama. That was what made him frightening. He looked like a man who had heard every version of family heartbreak and trusted none of it until it came with exhibits. Grant's attorney spoke first. He painted my brother as a responsible trustee trying to rescue a declining property. He described Cedar Hollow as sentimental, but financially unsustainable. He said I was grieving, disruptive, and attempting to interfere with a lawful transaction because I disliked change. Then Patricia stood when asked if she wished to address the court. My daughter left this town, she said, voice trembling. Grant stayed. He carried the burden. Now Evelyn comes back after my father's death and turns our private pain into a public spectacle. Judge Harlan looked at her over his glasses. Mrs. Hartwell, private pain is not the issue before me. Trust authority is. The courtroom went still. Jenna rose. She did not sound angry. She sounded prepared. She placed the deed into evidence first. Then the memorandum naming Grant as trustee, subject to community purpose restrictions. Then Arthur's missing appendix, verified by Walter Keene. Then the meal log showing active operations 12 days before Arthur's stroke. Grant stared at the table. Jenna continued with the Silver Oak materials. The false statement that ordinary operations had ceased. The consulting advance paid to Hartwell Realty Ventures. The phrase, temporary occupants to be cleared. The email calling residents clean up problems before closing. Judge Harlan's pen stopped on that one. Mr. Hartwell, he said, did you disclose the community purpose restrictions to Silver Oak in full? Grant leaned toward his microphone. Your Honor, the program had effectively ended. That was not my question. Grant's attorney touched his sleeve. The judge repeated slower. Did you disclose the restrictions in full? Grant swallowed. I relied on counsel and standard trustee authority. It was not an answer. Everyone heard it. Jenna then submitted photos of the changed locks, the termination notices, Tyler's planted paint can, the camera footage of Cody Vance's truck, and Matt's messages from Grant offering to make his loan problem disappear if he helped pressure me. When Matt's name was read aloud, I felt him behind me like a bruise. Judge Harlan reviewed the papers for several minutes. No one moved. Even Patricia seemed to understand tears had reached the end of their usefulness. At last, the judge looked up. Pending further proceedings, this court orders all activity related to the Silver Oak transaction suspended. No closing, no transfer, no further encumbrance of trust property. Grant's face went pale. Mr. Hartwell is temporarily suspended from active trustee authority. Mrs. Evelyn Reed is appointed interim successor trustee for the limited purpose of preserving Cedar Hollow Legacy Trust assets and restoring lawful community access. Patricia made a small sound. The judge kept reading. No program occupant is to be threatened, displaced, or pressured without further order of this court. The community kitchen, training shed, and related program facilities are to be reopened under supervised access. All trust financial records must be produced within 5 business days. A notice of pending litigation shall be recorded against the property. Then he looked directly at Grant. And if private security interferes with this order, Deputy Collins will assist in enforcement. The gavel came down once. Not loud. Final. Outside the courthouse, Grant walked past me without speaking. Patricia followed, her pearls bright against her throat like little white stones. I sit on the courthouse steps with the certified order in my hand. For the first time, the gate was not open yet, but the chain had lost its power. The punishment did not arrive like thunder. It came by email, certified mail, phone calls no one wanted to answer, and men in pressed shirts asking for documents Grant had never expected to produce. Silver Oak withdrew first. Heather Sloan sent formal notice that the company was suspending all obligations under the purchase agreement because Grant had failed to disclose material trust restrictions. By the end of the week, their counsel demanded return of the earnest money and reserved the right to sue Hartwell Realty Ventures for misrepresentation. Grant called it a misunderstanding. Silver Oak called it exposure. The bank moved next. Bluegrass Community Bank froze all pending activity tied to Grant's short-term loan and requested a full trustee accounting. Marcy Dobbs never said, "I told you so." Women like her did not need to. She simply sent every request through proper channels, clean enough to leave no fingerprints, sharp enough to draw blood. Then Cody Vance folded. Jenna brought me his written statement on a Tuesday afternoon while we sat in Grandpa's office, the same office that still had dust in the corners from the break-in. He says Grant told him to remove old program files before Silver Oak's final walkthrough, Jenna said. Does he admit he knew it was wrong? He admits Grant paid him cash and told him not to ask questions. That sounds like Cody. It also sounds like evidence. I looked around the room. The drawers had been repaired. The broken lock had been replaced. But something about the office would never be innocent again. Once a room has been violated, order does not fully erase the memory. Patricia's consequences came quieter. The temporary accounting showed several expenses charged to Cedar Hollow that had no business being there. Catered private lunches, travel reimbursements, floral arrangements for family events, a designer consultation for the retreat launch. Not enough to make headlines, enough to prove contempt. The court ordered repayment into the trust account pending final audit. Mom sent the check through her attorney. No note, no apology. Just Patricia Hartwell's signature under a number she would probably call unfair for the rest of her life. Grant lost more than money. That was what hurt him most. Men like my brother can survive a bill. Reputation is harder to refinance. The county real estate board opened an ethics review. 2 developers stopped returning his calls. At Millie's Diner, the same men who once nodded at his plans now went quiet when he walked in. Not hostile, worse, careful. A town can forgive many sins, but it does not like being made a fool in public. I should have felt triumphant. Some mornings I did. Then I would see Tyler still hesitating before entering the repair shed, as if permission might be revoked again. I would see Lila counting pantry boxes twice, unable to trust abundance. I would see Agnes lock the office file cabinet and touch the key at her neck like a rosary. Grant had not only tried to sell land, he had taught frightened people that safety could be temporary. Then was harder to repair. Jenna laid a new folder on Grandpa's desk. Foundation documents. I stared at the name on the first page. Cedar Hollow Legacy Foundation. "You are interim trustee," she said. You could wait. No. She watched me. If I keep all authority in my hands, even for a good reason, then Cedar Hollow is still depending on one person's character, I said. Grandpa built better than that. So we formed the board the way Arthur had required. Agnes would oversee financial records with an outside CPA reviewing annually. Owen would represent veterans and maintenance operations. Lila would represent transition families and the kitchen program. A local agriculture teacher, Daniel Price, would run training partnerships with the high school. Jenna would remain legal advisor without voting power. Tyler, not yet old enough for the board, was invited to join a youth advisory group. When I told him, he blinked hard. Me? You know what it feels like when adults make plans about you without asking you. He looked toward the old tractor. Yeah. Well, then we need you. For the first time in weeks, his smile reached both eyes. That evening, I stood alone in the community kitchen while Lila labeled shelves. Flour, beans, rice, coffee. The words were ordinary, but they felt like a prayer returning to its own language. Matt came by with new hinges for the pantry door. He did not ask to stay for dinner. He did not ask if we were okay. He simply worked quietly, cleaned up his tools, and left the receipt on the counter. It was not forgiveness, but it was repair. Small, honest, unfinished repair. Before I locked the office that night, I touched Grandpa's old desk and whispered, "We're not letting one name own this place again." Outside, the fields lay dark under a wide Kentucky sky. For the first time, Cedar Hollow did not feel like something I had won. It felt like something I had been trusted not to ruin. The morning Cedar Hollow reopened, the gate did not creak. Owen had oiled the hinges before sunrise because he said a place coming back to life ought to sound ready. The old chain was gone. In its place hung a wooden sign Grandpa Arthur had painted years before, sanded clean and sealed against weather. Free Saturday meals and skills training. Under it, Tyler had burned a new line into cedar with careful hands. A promise kept is also a kind of inheritance. I stood on the gravel drive with a paper cup of coffee warming my palms, watching cars pull in one by one. Not fancy cars, not resort guests. Pickup trucks with dented bumpers, minivans with car seats, an old Buick with a veteran plate. People came slowly at first, as if kindness might still be a trap if they trusted it too quickly. Then the kitchen door opened. Lila stepped out wearing an apron, dusted with flour, her hair pulled back, her daughter carrying a basket of biscuits beside her. The smell rolled across the yard. Butter, coffee, ham, bean soup, and something sweet with cinnamon. Lila was not waiting in line for help anymore. She was feeding the next person who needed enough strength to stand. "Breakfast is hot," she called. "Don't make me chase you." People laughed. That sounded more for Cedar Hollow than any court order. Near the repair shed, Tyler leaned over the old tractor with two younger boys watching every move. He explained the starter problem like Grandpa used to explain things. No shame, no hurry, no making a person feel small for not knowing yet. "You listen first," Tyler told them. "Machines will usually tell you where they hurt." I had to turn away for a second. Agnes sat in the office with a fresh ledger open, her glasses low on her nose. The file cabinets were labeled, the receipts were scanned, and the key no longer hung like a threat around her neck. It sat on the desk in plain view. "Transparency," she said when she caught me looking, "scares crooks worse than locks." Owen was by the fence, teaching two veterans how to brace a post. One of them had the same hollow stare Owen carried when Grandpa first brought him here. But his hands were busy. Sometimes that is where healing starts. Matt arrived near noon with a toolbox and 3 bags of hardware from Lexington. He did not make a speech. He did not ask for a clean slate. He fixed the pantry shelf, tightened a loose hinge, and helped Tyler carry lumber. When he passed me, he said, "I'll be here next Saturday too, if that's all right." I looked at him for a long moment. "That's all right," I said. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but not hopeless. Across the road, Grant stood beside his SUV. No suit that day, no polished speech, just a man looking at an open gate he no longer controlled. Nobody shouted at him. Nobody needed to. Millbridge had learned enough. The place he had called a cleanup problem was alive without his permission. He stayed less than 5 minutes. Patricia did not come at all. Her attorney mailed Grandpa's office key in a padded envelope with no note. I held it in my palm that morning, feeling its cold teeth press into my skin, and understood something I had fought not to understand. Some families do not return to what they were. Some only reveal what they had always been. By sunset, the yard was quiet again. The last pantry box had gone out. The last coffee pot had been washed. Tyler shut the tractor down, and Lila's children chased each other near the porch while Owen lowered the flag. I walked into the field alone. Young corn moved in the breeze, green and stubborn under the Kentucky sky. Grandpa used to say land remembers hands, not names, not bank accounts, hands. The ones that plant, mend, feed, lift, and refuse to turn away. I did not save Cedar Hollow because I won a family fight. I saved it because my grandfather had been right. Kindness without structure gets buried by people with better lawyers. But kindness with witnesses, records, courage, and a community willing to stand up can outlive greed. Some people inherit property. Some inherit the duty not to disgrace it. And on that evening, with the gate open behind me and the fields breathing around me, I finally felt the difference. Life has a way of testing whether we protect what is right only when it is easy or when it costs us something. Never let anyone call kindness foolish just because they cannot profit from it. If this story moved you, please leave a like for the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from. Thank you for staying until the very end, wishing you health, peace, and strength in your own battles. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.